But the next thing I want to say, and I'll put this over to you first, and I'll come back to what I think. So we're talking about, web designers and web developers and things like that, and web design in general changing or going away. Where do you see WordPress over the next couple of years? Do you think in, let's say, 27, 28, that WordPress is going to be still powering 40-odd% of the internet?
Nah, not 40%. I think it'll still be powering a high majority, but I don't know about 40%. Uh, I think the numbers are declining right now for WordPress in general. Market shares are just going to other places, Wix Studio,
Hmm.
Framer, Webflow. For e-commerce, still Shopify is the stronger solution. But God, 2 years from now, I don't know. It all depends. I mean, will Matt do another Matt? Like
Probably.
what's going to? I mean, there's so much uncertainty, and nah, I'm just playing around. I know. They probably maybe hopefully learn from that last bit, but the numbers are going down. I think though in 2 years from now, in general, what websites for sure, absolutely still relevant. Businesses still need it. I think that people will go to websites more intentional when they need to find information. Even right now, I find that right. I still go to websites even when I'm looking for something, but it has to be intentional. Like I have to want to learn something more from that specific site. But yeah, it's hard to say. That's a good one. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah, I kind of like want to let my mind go to some crazy theories right now.
I think for the foreseeable future, it will. I think the numbers will drop down. But again, I mean, talking to like Mark, for example, Torblock 1976, I know he's heavily into using AI, Claude Code, and so on, various different sort of AI tools and platforms to experiment and build sites. And I know he's very much in that kind of mindset, which is cool. But I also think that we have to kind of consider, like I said, going back to the beginning, people's usage of the internet and how that's not going to change dramatically quickly. You're expecting people with an ingrained use of maybe their entire adult life of using the internet to buy things, find information, watch media, consume things. That's not going to suddenly change very, very quickly. So while we may see a dip in the likes of WordPress, and I think we probably will, because we're in a bubble. And when you kind of consider looking at, for example, like when Elementor has released their Elementor one thing, I watched the video yesterday and looked at some of the comments about it, and there's probably like say 10 comments on there. And I had a little look today, and there's probably about 60 comments on there, and the number of people on there saying I'm off to this has just made me go over to Framer and or Webflow. Now, considering they're generally probably more expensive platforms, but when you get companies that are pushing their user base away, and I'm not specifically talking about Elementor here, it's just that's the one that's kind of the freshest in my mind right now because of what they're doing with their one platform. I think WordPress is probably going to do the same thing because full site editing for a lot of people is more complex than it used to be before, where people would just use it and they go in and they use the normal sort of WordPress tiny MCE editor, and it was very easy. It was very much like using Word. If you'd use a word processor, you could use that without a problem. Whereas full site editing and the Gutenberg editor and so on, I think WordPress is actually making itself more complicated to use and not simpler, which is probably why tools like Bricks and Elementor and things like that, where you can make a much more streamlined interface for users to get in and you can control aspects of it a lot easier. That's only going to get worse. I think more platforms are going to come out. If you look at Web Studio, for example, when that's sort of using a database there, if they start bringing out the ability to easily create CMS collections, all these things are going to eat into what WordPress has. And I think because WordPress is very much, doesn't really seem to know what it wants to do. It's like you've got the leadership team behind WordPress pushing it in one direction, a big chunk of the market sector, for example, what's Elementor up to now? Let's just say 15 million users or 15 million websites, should we say. That's still a massive chunk of websites that are not using WordPress as WordPress. They're using something completely different. Then combine that with all the things like Divi, all the different sort of builders and things. With full site editing just being such a mess at the moment, and the dashboard for WordPress being a mess because it's like there's 2 or 3 different parts of it that look completely different, people just look at it and go, I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't know what I'm doing. And then you've got other platforms which AI, for example, they can just tell it what they want. And again, Mark is a great example of this because he's got different people he knows and he shares these different links with us saying, like, this is a guy, never built a website in his life, gone into Bolt or Lovable or whatever, talk to it, and he's got a site that's got booking on there, it's got sort of like shows and things on this, so it's like a database-driven site kind of thing. And that guy's got no experience in building websites, but he's got a website that's quite, that would be a 5 to 10 grand website if someone like you or I was going to build it for them, maybe even more than that. And he's probably done it, if he's paid Bolt or Lovable, let's just say 2 months worth of the highest tier, a couple of $100 at most. And he's got a site that he can go back and say, I want to add this to it now. That means that when you got things like, which are basically, I mean, you think WordPress in comparison to stuff like that, it just looks like a dinosaur. It does. Everything is manual. You have to go in and you drag this there and you drop that there and you edit this. And then you're going to go somewhere else because you want to change the header. And your navigation's in a different place. Or you can sit there, you can just type in or talk and just say, add an extra navigation element in for this new page, create the new page, same style as the other one, blah, 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 blah. And suddenly you've got a page that's being built for you. You can understand why more and more people are going to go down that route. And as that gets easier, more people will adopt it. And I think that is going to be a major detriment to the likes of WordPress. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah. See, I'm still resistant on that. And that's my internal human nature resisting, the change, because, and I just had this like conversation with my buddy. He's all into AI, and, like 2 years, I have to see what happens. I just know like right now and in this next year, I don't see leaving WordPress for an AI tool. I think WordPress still has so much going for it. The content management part, something that is structurally sound, that is not just going to change, or a prompt isn't going to rearrange the code that you can't find and take you down the wrong path. I think things like that, and having the ecosystems behind it. And then also the developers and most of the developers and people building websites, they're the ones choosing tools. It's not like a client comes and says, yep, can you give me 5 different tools and let me choose which platform I want to build on? Usually either the client already knows, or, the developer just goes with what they use, or the web designer. It's tough though, but, a thought experiment, just putting it out there, like, what if Lovable creates a CMS that is structurally sound, like WordPress? It creates that, and it builds everything so that way we can build sites within a repeatable structure that's repeatable for all clients. You see, trying to do it right now for client work, it's going to be different on every website. You could prompt your way to a CMS. I think it'll cost a lot more money though, because I think it takes crazy amount of hours. And that was the thing I asked my friend too. I was like, how long did it take you to build your website and figure all this out? And he was like, yeah. He was like, it was insane, how many hours and how many credits. Also, again, my inner nature kicking in, but I just don't find prompting healthy. I think vibe coding could be unhealthy in a way. It's like slot machines with the dopamine. like I can't do short form content. I hate short form content because I hate what it does to me. And I think yeah. And I'm also seeing that too in here, that developers don't just like prompting. They like building, creating, finding solutions. So, you can see how I could feel both ways about this, and I'm just like everybody else right now inside of this time. And I'm still working through and catching myself when the closed-mindedness comes in. And you said it before, open-mindedness. Like, being open-minded is the most important thing we can do. Being closed-minded, and when we catch ourselves being closed-minded, that's when we have to take a step back and check ourselves. But it takes a level of self-awareness